Folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show. The success of Batdorf and Rodney was a confluence of factors. They came of age during freeform radio. You might hear the Flying Burrito Brothers, followed by Cannonball, followed by Buck Owens. The jam circuit was alive and well for those seasoned woodshedders. They could go coast to coast, have a week or more engagement building indigenous fan bases because you were in such close proximity to the band. Along the way, they ran into other musicians that influenced their sound and maybe even joined them. Record companies had cats like Ahmed Ertegun, who saw a place in the enclosing record industry for this acoustic-electric duo. Let's Get Me Down with the Swampers and Muscle Shoals with Barry Beckett playing vibes. Or back to L.A. with the likes of John Barbada, Russ Kunkel, and Brent Midland heating up and cooling down all in sync. These cats weren't playing Lydian scales, rather honky blues, lightening up movie theaters, playhouses, and college campuses. In these current times of electronic music, one way of coming back to a middle ground is by playing acoustic guitar with great output but little amplification. The messages are relayed in stories, unpackaged or uncorked, slowly discriminating into danceable music. Still doing it after 4 decades, John Batdorf, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hey, nice to be here, Jake. Thanks for having me.
Hey, can you talk about where you grew up and the closest urban environment and the kind of music that was out in the streets when you were wherever you grew up?
Well, I grew up in Ohio. I was born in Yellow Springs, Ohio. And, which, by the way, Richie Furay was born in the same city.
Wow.
Which is pretty unusual that the guys ended up in the same business out of Yellow Springs, Ohio.
Yeah.
And, I was there until I was 5, and then I moved to New Mexico, and then back to Ohio. And, I was just a guy going to junior high and high school, and when 64 happened, I saw the Beatles, and I had always been, my father was a musician and wanted me to play music, and he played country music, and my uncle was a country recording artist. And I just kind of didn't get into it. I liked playing, but I didn't really think that country was my calling. And then, the Beatles came, and all of a sudden there was some really cool musicians and really cool music that young people could relate to, and it just changed my life. All of a sudden, I wanted to be a musician again. And, so that was 64, and then, I ended up 6 years later starting to deal with Atlantic Records. So it was what a weird thing to be influenced by a show on TV, the Ed Sullivan Show, but so many of us were. It was just an incredible time. Was it just
their independence, like their own original state of mind, their songwriting? I mean, what was it that? I mean, all the cats talk about it in one way, shape, or form. And then obviously the values they had, as far as sharing the music, especially like Indian music. But what stood out to you when the Beatles hit the scene? What took you about them?
I was 12, and it was just something so fresh and new about this and exciting that, obviously we'd never seen anything like that before. And you saw these guys playing on stage, dressed in suits, and here's an audience, and all these girls are going crazy and screaming. You're thinking, I would like to do that, Jake. That looks pretty cool. So that was probably the beginning. It was like, these guys are really cool, and all the girls are going crazy for them. Yeah. Maybe I should try this.
Right. It's not rocket science, really.
Not really.
But you were. So you grew. Where were you? Like, did you get into the jug band scene at all, or what were you playing in right at that time when the Beatles hit? Still acoustic type music?
Well, when the Beatles came out, and there were so many great bands that were coming out, the Kinks and the Stones and the Animals, and Bee Gees. I mean, there were just so many incredible bands playing songs and writing songs that you never heard anything like before. And so what I did when I was probably around 13, I started a band, and we're just a typical cover band playing all the great stuff from England, and I was in a lot of bands. I kept getting plucked out of bands. I actually was I played wheelchair electric piano back then.
Oh, that's so awesome. That's one of my favorite instruments of all time.
Oh, and to this day, I don't know what happened to it. I must have traded it for a guitar or something, because I have the old original brown one that my parents bought for me.
Right.
And I played in all these bands. Well, no originals. It was all cover.
Right.
And I kept getting out of bands and joining bands. And I was always in bands that were older than me, because I was pretty far along for my age. And finally,
in technique or just like wisdom or what?
Well, I think that I had a really good stage presence. I could sing really well.
Right.
I played keyboard really well, and played a little guitar. And I just felt like that was kind of my calling. And so at age 15, I got plucked out of a band to be in a band called The Loved Ones. That was the big band in Dayton, Ohio. And they decided they wanted to try to go out to California for the summer and see if they could get interested in the band. It was a 6-piece band, brother and sister, the main 2 singers, and then 4 other players who were all really, really good. And they were all in there between 18 and 20, and I was 15. But I was good. And so we went out to California and actually met Ahmet Ertegun, and he had interest in the band and wanted to sign us. But because this happens a lot, bands start smelling some success, and then people get greedy, and it turned out the brother and sister decided that they were going to be the star, and they were going to, the 4 other guys who were really part of the band were going to be sidemen.
Mm-hmm.
So we got really ticked off at that, so we set up a meeting with Ahmet at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and went over and talked to him, and he said, well, then forget it, the deal's over. So that band didn't happen, but that was my meeting with Ahmet Ertegun. And he was this guy was such a great guy.
What talk about the intangible qualities, because I think it's, explain what his position was and then like the kind of cat that he was.
Well, he was obviously a rich guy. He was from Turkey. But, he loved hanging out with the band guys.
Yeah, he was,
he would just, he would come to, just for an example, after that band broke up, the 4 of us stayed together, and we tried to put a band together, and I wasn't really, I was writing, but I wasn't writing very well at that point, but I was the writer. But almost every time he would come to town, he would come hear the band over at the Musicians Union in L.A., and he goes, oh, you're not ready yet, not ready yet, but he would come. This guy would come, and just, I think because he liked hanging out with guys. He loved music so much. And here's this guy who's just, here we are, the degenerate, broke, hippie musicians, and we're sitting there with Ahmet Ertegun, which is pretty remarkable, but that's how he was. And then when I finally met Mark Rodney a few years later, after I left the band, Mark Rodney and I had this really special thing. It was pretty remarkable. His dad was a jazz player, Red Rodney, who played bebop with Charlie Parker.
Oh, sure, yeah, I know that cat. I see his records all over the place.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And so Mark kind of had that background, and I had more of kind of this English rock band thing, and I used to try to sing with an English accent. It's pretty silly because the Beatles didn't even do that. but we had this thing, and we were later influenced. The Beatles were the thing that really got it going, but then the Buffalo Springfield came out, and I thought there was something so great about that sound. And then there was Richie Furay was in the band, and I heard this acoustic music, kind of in a rock band, and Stephen Stills was like no other player I'd ever heard before, and made the acoustic guitar, hip, because before that it was either a country musician instrument or kind of a folk instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really like folk music, and I didn't really like country music. Not that it's not good, I just wasn't, what I was drawn to. But to see it in a rock band and playing like a solo from Bluebird And I thought, wow, this is kind of the sound. So I actually got out from behind the piano and traded into this amp that I had gotten.
Wow.
And got an acoustic guitar, and because I wanted to be like those guys. And then Crosby, Stills and Nash came out, the whole nother thing, and then Poco. And so that's kind of what the music that we thought we can do this, but we can do this with our own little twist because of, the background differences that Mark and I had. Something about the two of us together was really a really special thing. It was a magical time when we first started doing it.
Yeah, I mean, why don't you put us back in that time? I mean, as far as you guys didn't necessarily. How were you? Were you always, at least early on, did you feel like you were able to have a lot of creative control of what you were doing?
Well, yeah. Mark and I actually met in Las Vegas, of all places. He was living with his dad, and I moved up to Las Vegas with my girlfriend at the time, and moved in with her parents. And I actually met Mark at a coffee shop that I was playing solo at. I was doing originals and covers. And I had probably like 15, 20 different originals at the time. And then Mark kept insisting on wanting to jam with me. And I said, I don't really want to do it. But finally one night he talked me into it. And I thought, wow, this is kind of a cool sound. So we started working on songs and then went to L.A. and ended up getting a deal. And Ahmet was the kind of guy, unlike other people I've been with as far as record presidents, he was a guy that once he heard you and liked you, he didn't really want to change you. He just wanted you to get better at what you did. And so he... Can you give an example?
Can you give an example of that? That's a very fascinating... I love these cats that were the... I mean, they really loved the music, They understood. They understood the craft,
Right, and I don't, I could be completely naive about this, but I don't think that Ahmet did it for the money. I think he did it for the love of the music. Mm-hmm. But because of that, the money came.
Right.
He wasn't trying to manufacture bands and make them something out of a mold. He just heard bands, kind of got what they did, and then tried to let them grow and develop on their own. And I had, all these songs, and Ahmet actually, at the Beverly Hills Hotel, we first played the song, Oh My Surprise. He actually jumped up in the air, and he was saying, this is great, and we were freaked out. But we ended up going to Muscle Shoals a few months later to cut the album, and we did the album. We thought, oh, we're great, this is going to be a fantastic record. And then Ahmet called me, and he said, I don't think we're quite there yet. He goes, I don't want you to, and this is still Ahmet. He goes, I don't want you to worry about writing hits. Just write what you feel. And, I'm like 18.
Wow.
So I go, okay.
Wow.
So I ended up writing three songs that weren't on the original recording and ended up going on the off-the-shelf record. And then we didn't say, listen, man, we got to get a hit, we got to find a hit. He was just saying, just write what you feel and develop what you're doing. And that's what made him so special, because he didn't try to change the band. He wouldn't sign them if he didn't think they had something. And then he just gave them space, to grow, and it was really great. I mean, he produced us at Muscle Shoals, which is.
What was I had a chance to interview David Hood, one of the Swampers. Did you? What was that?
Yeah.
What was that experience? I mean, was that the first time you met those cats?
Well, as a matter of fact, when there's a place in California called Muscle Shoals, right here on the West Coast, up north from where I live.
Really?
And when Ahmet said,
wow.
So we played for Ahmet, and he was jumping up and down and said, you guys are great. I want to take you to Muscle Shoals, and we're going to do a record, blah, blah, blah. So I'm thinking we're going to go up, by Malibu, which is where Muscle Shoals was. And we go, oh, yeah, that's great. We had never heard of those guys. And then, as a matter of fact, when we left the audition, Mark says, who was that guy? He had no idea who Ahmet was, which was maybe kind of a good thing.
Right.
And so then we found out later where Muscle Shoals was, down in Alabama. And we flew down there, and Ahmet, the story was that Ahmet would go down there and hang out at the truck stops with the truck drivers just to get a sense of the pulse of the nation, which is pretty remarkable. And I actually never saw him do that, but I believe it because that's the kind of guy he was. That's why he was so in tune with everything.
Wait, hold on. He was going to the truck stops to talk to the truckers?
That was what the rumor was.
Wait, I'm sorry. This is blowing my mind. Has he left us? Is he still around, this cat?
Ahmet?
Yeah.
Ahmet died at a Rolling Stones concert at least 10 years ago.
Oh, man.
He fell down the stairs at a Rolling Stones concert.
Holy shit.
In New York City.
Holy shit. I'm sorry to break that. That just kind of blew my mind. That is unbelievable. So he went to the truck stop. Continue, please.
That's what the guys at Muscle Shoals told us. I mean, we went down there, and David Hood was the bass player. He was a really nice. I mean, all the guys were nice. Roger Hawkins and Barry Beckett were the three guys that played with us.
Exactly.
We didn't meet Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson was a really great guitar player that kind of wasn't what we did. And so we would just sit around with Barry, and I would play him these songs, and he would make charts for the guys. And really, most of the cuts, these guys were so stinking good. Most of the cuts, including this one song was on our first album, Can You See Him, which was a really big jam, and probably unlike anything they'd ever played before. That was the first take. And most of the songs were either first or second take, and
Wow.
Mark and I were in an ISO booth playing our parts, and they were, in their little room, and it was just, these guys were so good and so nice, and
that's awesome. That's awesome. Because it says
really
Barry Beckett's playing vibes. Like I was
he played back and piano. He's a fantastic piano player, obviously.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, I mean, I was like, that album. What is the hardest album to come by? I mean, I know the CD is released. We have a reissue going on, but I'm a vinyl collector, and I see a lot of. I don't really see that first album very much at all.
No, actually, I just re-released it. I released because we had such a hassle with trying to get record companies to re-release stuff, and then they did, and it was kind of an inferior product. And so just recently, I released a double CD called Portfolio, which is all three Batdorf and Rodney albums. It's got some songs from the band Silver that I was in that I wrote, and also 3 demos that I recorded in '73 that I found and had to bake the tapes so they wouldn't disintegrate when I played them. And just put it out just recently in the last couple of months because, it's today you can make your own records, you can distribute your own records, and you own the music. And it's so, I think it's just such a shame that so many bands recorded and made records back then, and then, the record companies refused to give you the masters back, or they'll put them out, and you don't make any money. It's just a crime. And so we just decided to say, what the heck, we're going to put this thing out, and if they tell us to stop, we will. But I want the music out there. They keep reissuing it every 10 years or something in a limited thing, and there's been bootlegs out there, which is terrible. So today is so great to actually make a record and sell the record and actually get the money. It's a remarkable.
Well, I mean, it's like I don't know how to. I mean, I didn't grow up in your time, so I mean, this is to me, it's all fantasy, and I know that it was not as good as it sounds. I mean, every time period has its warts and all, but
oh, without a doubt.
I mean, but yeah, this is like what can I say? I mean, this is something that, like, while I am hearkening back to this period of time, it's not something I could have done at that time. The technology was not nearly where it is, and I don't want to rail against digitization because there's an element of that in our society. But I think that I just see, like, you can take it in a micro level with the music industry, or like at a macro level. I just see more a shift towards a lot less Ahmet Ertegun's out there today. A lot more a lot of ego driven stuff, and the scene with you guys growing up was ridiculous because you were hearing all this amazing music, you were seeing it. It was motivating you to get better and want to create. Really. That's what he said. He wanted you to create what was inside John Batdorf, you know?
Exactly. And there was not to be inspired by. I mean, the bar was so high at that point.
Right, the bar was so high, you know, and now...
It was. I mean, you had the Beatles, and you had, all these great bands. So you were aspiring to be, as close to that bar, although you knew in your heart you were never going to be that good or better, but it gave us something really high to shoot for, which is really what makes a lot of great music happen, because you are just trying to be that good. And, I don't want to be an old guy talking, but I don't know that that's the case nowadays. I don't know that the bar is nearly what it was.
Talk a little bit about the circuit that you guys went on. I mean, I read somewhere you had a really good loyal fan base, which is one reason you hung around for a while. And I just wanted to know the kind of bands that you would team up with on the road, and then kind of some of those, maybe a memory that stands out for you about the road travel, because the circuit was hopping back then.
Oh, it was incredible. I mean, there were a lot of great clubs, a lot of great listening rooms, and the colleges were great. That was really a place that a lot of bands like us played at. And it was funny because when we went to the colleges, we thought the students were gold. We were like 18. And it was that, which is tells you about the time.
Oh, it was upside down, man. It was so cool. It was just so unbelievably cool.
Yeah, we got to play with incredible bands. I mean, our very first tour was with the band Bread, that was huge at the time.
Sure.
And then we went on to play with, did a lot of gigs with Poco and America, Doobie Brothers when Mike McDonald just joined. We got to play on the first Hall & Oates tour when they just had Sarah Smile was coming out. And it was just we went on tour with the Doobies with Michael McDonald. When he first joined, and when Taking It to the Streets came out.
Oh my God, that was
an incredible tour.
Unbelievable. And so, for those years, were you doing any session work at all? Or were you just primarily going back and forth between your new album and then the road?
It was mainly just writing songs and going on the road for maybe 6-7 months, and then taking a few months off to record another album, and then go back out again. It was just that's just kind of what it was. When I had enough songs, because I was really the sole writer. So I had to, whenever I had time, I had to try to write songs, and then we had enough, and we make an album, and then go out and do it all over again. It was really great. It really was great.
Talk about the performances that you have had since you or that you anticipate having with the re-release of the albums.
Well, what was really cool is in 2007, Mark and I got asked to go back and play on satellite radio, and we made an album together. We played in the studio with a bass player, a good friend, Bill Batstone, and we went through all the songs and played them, and they were really nice enough to give us the masters, and we released a CD called Still Burnin'. And Mark and I had been playing a lot, because he played on a solo CD I did about a year earlier, and he was kind of enthused to get back into playing, and by the time we made that record in that studio, we were so tight again. It was just that thing was back.
Mm.
And that only comes back from playing. I mean, you have to play and play and play. And so we started doing some shows, and then Mark was kind of losing interest, and he didn't have the greatest health. And so he kind of stopped doing it. But I have, since 2004, when my TV of shows dried up, I made a record, made 2 records with James Lee Stanley, All Wood and Stones, which kind of got us back, at least got me back. We got so much airplay on the record that I said, well, maybe I should start recording again, because the technology had changed. satellite radio was out, and now all these internet stations were popping up, and they were playing stuff that hadn't been heard in 30 years. And all of a sudden, I was getting emails, fan mails from people who were big Batdorf and Rodney fans that I didn't even know existed. And it was inspiring enough for me to want to start writing again. So I've been touring now for the last 10 years.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I made 4 solo CDs and made the record with Mark, and the 2 with the Stones record, and now have a new CD out with my friend Michael McLean, which is called Soundtracks to Recovery. And right now I'm working on new songs for some upcoming projects. So, as long as the songs keep coming and they're good, I'm just going to keep doing it because I still love it.
This is special. This is actually a really special thing for me. I really want you to talk about the band Silver. I don't care how. I want to know the entire story of how you put the band together, and this is why I do this show.
Sure. Kind of turned out on the third album, which was Life Is You, which was our Arista record. We had talked about adding another player to the band. We had a bass drummer for the first 3 records. And there was a lot of Hammond and piano on the third album. And so we found a guy up north, his name was Brett Midland, and he came down, and we thought, well, this guy's going to be great. He was a great singer, keyboard player.
Wait, hold on. I want to ask you a question. How did you find him?
Well, our bass player was from Northern California. He knew Brent. Rick Carlos was the bass player. I know this guy up in the Bay Area. He's a really good player. He can play B3 and piano.
Oh, that's okay. So Rick Carlos hooked that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we thought, well, this is cool. He sounds great, and he was a really good third-part harmony guy. And so we went out and did the whole tour for the third album, and we were getting ready to make another album on Arista, and some bad scene came down, and I decided that I didn't want to continue as Batdorf and Rodney.
And that's what I'm saying. This is not, to me, it's not. I don't want to dwell on that at all. Whatever happened is gone in the past. To me, it's just this is an exciting story. So no worries.
Well, it's okay. Well, we had a meeting. My manager was John Hartman and Harlan Goodman, and I called them and said, "Listen, I can't do this anymore. I have to move on. But I have this idea." I said, Brett and I have gotten pretty close, and I've just met this other guy at a party tonight. And I said, "He sounds like he might be part of a part of a group that maybe I'd like to be involved with." So his name was Greg Collier, and so I got a hold of Greg and said, "Hey, listen, why don't we come up and get together with me and my buddy Brent and play a little bit?" So we played, and I thought, well, this is really good. I think this is going to be a really good band. And we'd only played together a couple of times, so I went to my manager and said, "Listen, man, we got to go to Clive. We got to tell him this isn't happening. But I want him to know that there is a new band that I think he's going to love."
This is unbelievable. Wait, hold on. How? What did you? Did you and Brent ride Harley Davidsons together? Like, how? What do you just had a good time? I need to know this, man. That guy was a legend, and I'm just so happy to hear that at the beginning you gave him essentially the door to his career, because the period of the Grateful Dead that I love the most is that early '80s period when Brent's there. But I knew the origins trace back to Silver, and it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. I just talk about that cat, man. He's a legendary guy.
Yeah, he actually went back to Batdorf and Rodney. It was really an integral part in making the sound bigger, a whole new kind of a thing, having the B3, and we loved having Brett in the band. So we went to Clive and told him about this trio. I said, listen, man, we're just kind of starting, but I think if you give us a little bit of time, I think you're going to take it. So Clive goes, okay. He was encouraging me to reconsider, but I said, no, I'm not going to reconsider. I have to move on. So the three of us, every day for 2 weeks, practiced, played each other's songs, and learned. And we had this incredible blend of the three of us. It was so good.
Yeah, did you tell me you recorded some of this stuff, man?
Oh yeah, actually we used to hang a mic. He used to hang a mic.
John Batdorf, man, I need to hear some of this stuff immediately. Unbelievable.
Well, I have to try to dig those tapes up. I have no idea where they are.
No, I mean, that has to be, because that's precious stuff, man.
It's great.
That's legacy.
We thought, here we are, we feel like we're kind of a cross between Poco, Buffalo Springfield, Batdorf and Rodney. We have this new thing, because Greg kind of sounded like a little bit like Richie Frey, and I kind of had a kind of a stilty kind of thing going, and then Brent had his, he was such a great singer, and he could sing really extremely high. And so I think we had 9 or 10 songs, and Clive came back into town, and we went in his room at the Beverly Hills Hotel, which is where all these guys stayed, right in the Rhodes, and Greg and I played acoustics, and we played Clive our stuff, and he goes, okay, let's do it. Let's make an album. So
wow.
We were going to go ahead and be a trio, and my manager said, you know what, I think that, I know we're going to get a bass player and a drummer, maybe we should get guys that are equal partners and equal talent to you guys and really make a super band. And so we thought, well, who do you got? And he goes, well, I know this drummer. His name is Harry Stenson. He's a great singer. He went out and subbed for America when their drummer was hurt. Really great singer, good guy, really solid drummer. And then we have Bernie Ledden's brother, Tom, who plays bass, sings. And we said, well, let's give it a shot. So we got a rehearsal space, and we rehearsed all the time. And the band got really, really tight. And so Clive agreed that the 5-piece band was a cool thing. And we went in and cut the album with a guy named Tom Sellers, who produced the third Batdorf and Rodney album. And up at the Indigo Ranch, which is up in kind of Malibu, up in the hills, we just lived at the ranch while we were making the record. We were like recording at 4 or 5 in the morning. It was stupid. But when you're there, you're just doing it. And so the album was cut in a couple of weeks. And the album, Clive loved the record, and the vocals on the record were fantastic. We had actually 4 lead singers, and 5-part harmony going on most of the time, and they're really pretty solid musicians. And went out, and we got booked on the America tour when they were doing their greatest hits record, which was huge. It was us, John Sebastian, and America, playing all the outside amphitheaters, the 20,000 seaters.
Wow!
And in the meantime, we had a song that Clive had asked us to do, which actually originally was recorded as a Batdorf and Rodney single, which I fought like crazy with the song Wham Bam. And he said, look, that was part of the deal. He says, if you guys put the single out for the summer, then we have a deal. So we decided, what the heck. So Wham Bam became a big hit, and wasn't anything really like the band, which was, it felt silly to us.
Isn't that always the way it is, though?
Yeah, pretty much. But that was the dealing with Clive opposed to Ahmet and David Geffen, who were more into creating artists and not really creating an act. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Molding an act to be like this guy or these people or these girls or whatever. So we did the record, and the record did pretty well. Went out, did a big tour. And we really actually became really a good band because we played so much, and we started writing all these songs together. And so we were supposed to present all the songs to Clive, so we had a rehearsal studio, and he came over and listened to all the songs, and he didn't like them. And so we had a big thing where he was trying to give us songs. He would give us, these Kiki D songs, and I got the music in me, and all these songs. And then, no, man, this is that's kind of not what we do. And so he and the manager got into a big kind of a stalemate, and Clive kind of got to the point where he said, "Listen, okay, this is not going anywhere. I will let you guys out of the deal if you give us $200,000 and 4 points from whatever label you go with," which basically said, "See ya." And because we know we couldn't get a deal like that, there was no possible way we could get a deal like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we were frozen out, and the band just, fell apart. And Brent and I and Harry stayed together, and we're making some more demos, more songs we wrote, and but we couldn't get any interest in it. The manager had kind of been there, done that, and then Brent got the chance to play in the Bob Weir band with the bass player and drummer from the Batdorf and Rodney. And so that's where the connection for him started. And Harry went back and played. He had a label in Nashville called Dead Reckoning, and he's been out with Charlie Stewart many, many years, and very successful in the Nashville area.
Yeah, no. Tell me his name again.
Harry Stenson.
Harry.
Yeah, Harry Stenson. Look him up on allmusic.com.
Yeah, no. So you, after the bullshit disintegration with Arista, you guys went back and were still doing song, like you were still writing.
Yeah, we wanted to be a trio, the three of us, and it just didn't work out. After a while, guys kind of went their separate way. Brent got the offer. I can't blame him.
Yeah.
So that was kind of that.
So, have you ever, sort of walked away from music and found it again? I guess you probably did at some point.
Well, I've pretty much done music since I was a kid. That's all I've ever done for a living. But I became a staff songwriter soon after that. Bill Halverson, who was the producer on the second Batdorf and Rodney album, introduced me to a guy, Jay Warner, who worked for a company called the Entertainment Company. And I became a staff writer for them for 2 years. And then I actually got a solo deal with 20th in 1981. And we actually had the deal, and the first song was going to be the old Ronette song, Be My Baby. And the day before the record came out, my manager and I called the publisher of Be My Baby and said, "Listen, we got this record coming out, and if you give us some help, it'd be great. I'll promote it." And they said, "Great. What label's it with?" And we said 20th. And they go, "Well, didn't you hear?" And I go, "Didn't we hear what?" They said, "Well, the label's going under. Marvin Davis bought 20th Century Fox and dissolved the label because it wasn't making any money." So my record's coming out tomorrow. I go, "Well, you better call him." So I called the president, Neil Portnow, and he said, "Maybe you better come by." And it was it. The record was, the single came out actually and got in the trade, but the record never got made because there was no label anymore.
What was the third Batdorf and Rodney album was called what?
Life Is You.
Life Is You.
Yes.
What were your feelings about that? How that album, was that your favorite of all the albums?
No, actually my least favorite of all of them, mainly because we really lost control. First two albums, first one was Atlantic, second one with Asylum. When Asylum was coming out, David Geffen
right.
was very much like Ahmet in developing artists. There was people on the label were great. I mean, Jackson Brown, JoJo Gunn was on the label, and the Eagles came out, and there was just J.D. Souther, Ned Doheny, and so we were there and loved that, and they always just kind of let you alone. They put you with producer and you want to make a record. Well, Mark and I split up for a little bit and got back together. We heard about this new label with Clive Davis, and then we heard about Clive Davis and his success at Columbia, and so we auditioned for him, and he said he wanted to sign us. Had a bunch of new songs, and it turned out, and this is something that happened. It should have been a clue for us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Batdorf and Rodney always had kind of a jam thing associated with some of the songs. That was kind of our thing. We loved the guitar interplay, and that's kind of what made us different than, say, you know, the Seals and Crofts or, you know, Brew and Shipley, who, I mean, those guys just sang songs. We were really into this kind of this thing. And so we played back in New York, a place called my father's place on Long Island.
Yeah, that's where I grew up.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, in Mineola there.
And a guy's name was Epi, who actually ran the place. And so we're there, and Clive shows up at the gig. We've been out on the road for, you know, 4 or 5 weeks. They said that Clive's coming, and we went, oh, shit, great, you know, we're all burned out. And so Clive shows up with Bob Fiden, who's the head of A&R at Everest, New York. And so we play there, and we kill him. It's just the three of us. We have me and Mark and Rick Carlos, and we got 2 encores, and the place was going nuts. And so we figured, oh, this is going to be great. Clive's going to see this, and he's going to just, you know, lose it. It's going to be fantastic. And he comes downstairs after the show and said, you know, that's really good, guys, but you were really lucky that there was an instrumental audience there tonight. And at that point, we thought, well, apparently he's never really heard the other record. Because that was what we did. And so...
He didn't even listen to the other one. He didn't even listen to it.
No. He just heard what
Oh,
we
my
did.
God. This is unrealistic.
He thought we were going to be, you know, Simon and Garfunkel or...
Oh, my God. Yeah, right.
So all the solos that were on the record got edited so small, from, you know, maybe a 12-bar solo to a 4 bars at that. And the sound became very homogenized. It got very, very soft, because we really, you know, we had some soft acoustic stuff. We always liked to kind of rock too, and Clive didn't want that, and so that it really changed the sound, and we had a lot of problems. I had to do a couple of songs.
Why didn't he want the more outside stuff?
Well, I think because he had such a success with Barry Manilow. Because I heard the story about, you know, Barry had these songs, and Clive made him do the song Mandy, and Barry was crying. He said, I can't do this. But it became a huge hit. Right. So the deal with Clive was, you know, you can do 80 years and you got to do 2 of mine. But he'd give you songs that were, you know, potentially hit songs, but it seemed like it had nothing to do with the sound of the band. And, you know, you could only, you know, hone stuff so much to make it fit in with what you're doing. So we had to do, and this guy's a very successful writer, and you know, I wish I had nearly the amount of hits that he had, but Jim Weatherly was a guy that had a lot of hits for Out of Sight in the Pits, along with a lot of other people. And he had 2 songs that he made us do that we didn't really want to do, but we had no choice. So that's when we really started losing control, and then the producers said, you know, I don't want the whole band there when we mix, and it just got more like, well, isn't this our record?
Right.
You know?
Right.
I think it's important that we're there, you know. So that happened. The same thing happened with Silver, and, you know, which led to the demise in the end, because we didn't want to do I Got the Music in Me. You know, it's just like, this isn't us. It was like a disco song.
No, I mean, that's what I wanted to know, is because Silver was, you were teetering on that rhythm and blues, but disco had not yet really taken a foothold yet, you know?
It was just kind of sneaking in. When we had Wham Bam out,
yeah.
Disco Duck was also on the charts at the same time. We got to number 16, was the highest the record ever got, which is by far the highest any record it had ever gotten that I've been involved with. But it seemed dumb when we played it in the set. It's just like, okay, here's this other band's song, we'll play it for you, and then here's Silver again. I mean, it was really silly. But, you know, that's the way it was.
How did you... Rodney, did you guys meet Rick Carlos? How did he come into the play with Batdorf and Rodney originally?
Well, when Mark had lived in Vegas about a year before me, and there was a big band that had moved in from Northern California called Terracotta. And there was a guy, Archie Johnson, who was the main guy, Gary Quantz, Rick Carlos, John Messeri, and there was another guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. And so Mark kind of met these guys, and one of them still lived in Vegas, the other lived in Northern California, and we put the band together. Mark said, man, we had to call these guys, they're really good.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when we found Rick and John.
So then Rick,
they were good.
Yeah. Is Rick still like? Have you rapped with him at all?
I haven't talked to him in a really long time. we're Facebook friends. That's about as close as we've gotten. Because the thing is, when bands break up, matter of fact, Rick and John were originally meant to be in Silver. Because our manager initially said, let's get Rick and John to be the bass player and drummer. I'm going, oh, gosh. I kind of wanted to move on, because this was kind of a new thing. And actually, I thought, and this was nothing against them, but I thought that it took away from what the magic that the trio had by adding those guys. It just felt like we were going backwards. And as a matter of fact, when we practiced for 2 weeks, and then John Hartman and Harlan Goodman, who were going to manage us, came to the rehearsal and didn't like it and said, I don't think we want to do this band. I think we'll hope you find somebody else. And it was through the magic of, because we played for John Hartman and Harlan Goodman as a trio, and they flipped out.
Right.
And luckily, I said, well, listen, now what's changed? I said, think about it. We have gotten worse by addition. So I said, listen, I'm going to go bring you that tape that you guys heard, the three of us, and before you make a decision, please listen to this tape. And they heard the trio, and said, yeah, we'll do it. Let's try to find some other guys. So that's where we met Harry and Tom, and it worked out great because they were new and it was fresh. When you bring, it's like when you're going somewhere new, you don't really want to bring a ton of baggage with you. It's better to have, kind of like starting at ground zero and moving on, and it felt like with John and Rick for the new band, we've been in Batdorf and Rodney the whole time, and we had the hassles and the BS that goes on with being in a band. It just felt like I didn't really want that baggage in that band, and it turned out to be a really good thing because we had a really good start and it was all fresh. And
no, I was going to say the guy would have really been interested to hear that record as a trio. It sounds like it comes up just a little bit short.
Yeah.
But when you guys were just in that trio, just cooking, writing songs and practicing, what kind of tunes were you listening to? Like, especially on from the jazz point of view, Brem was a pretty jazzy player, actually.
Yeah, but he was writing. He'd never really written a lot of stuff before, but he was such a talented guy and such a great singer. He wrote a song called "Musician," which was on the album, and "Climbing," and he was just like this kid in a candy store, writing these songs, and the three of us sounded so strong together. And they were a little bit more jazzy than what we did, but they weren't jazz. They were just really kind of. I saw him kind of like as a Mike McDonald kind of guy.
That's right. That's a very good. Just his chops though. If you let him. If you let him play, it was just ridiculous. So you guys were, if it was a trio, you guys would sing, and then you'd take a solo. Would you guys each do instrumentals in the song?
Yeah, Brent and I did a lot of stuff. We played harmony. He'd play, instead of twin guitar would be guitar Rhodes, where the other guy was, banging out the rhythm, and it was pretty cool. John, I will send you money. I would love to hear just a couple of these demo tapes, man. This is rare shit. I still have an analog tape player in my car, but it just goes back. This to me is like the indigenous music that's sitting around on everybody's floors. Right. It still needs to come out and see the light of day because, it's all.
music, and I said that at the time. I said, whereas you were inspired, by Stephen Stills playing acoustic guitar, he made it more of a power acoustic kind of feel, and even now you decided to do Rolling Stone songs with acoustically. Was it just
right?
What was the? I mean, in my mind, I go to a lot. Music has become much more like. Like Clive Davis, he was prophetic when he said, it was a real instrumental audience. I don't really know if there's instrumental audiences left anymore. I really don't. I mean, it's that abstract, sort of in the moment kind of thing. It's just, it's everything's very standard, very square, very homogenized, very conformed. And it must be disappointing to see that to a degree from. Even though, because you went through such a fluid and fucked up, but a much more fluid time for music to be able to breathe, And obviously, if music can't breathe, then chances are the consciousness of society is not going to be able to breathe either.
Right. Well, it was definitely music of that time. Nothing like any of those bands that ever happened before, and it really before that, bands really didn't make much money, and record labels weren't making the kind of money that they're making now. It was all kind of new. It was all just, like going out there with a machete and making an album and trying to find a new path to go to. And, once it started really becoming a big money machine, then it seemed like everything started to change. And nowadays it seems like that the audience and society now is more. I mean, I see a lot of these acts that, to me, feels like what I used to see in Vegas on the because I saw Elvis when I was 18. I saw him at the International.
Very. What did it look like? Very choreographed kind of thing.
Well, it just seemed like a show, even though he was great. I mean, Elvis was great, but it was a show.
Mm-hmm.
They were dancers and all this stuff. I'm thinking, wow, what a weird, kind of a thing to have part of the band. And then you see other people with, there's three girls dancing up there and blah, blah, blah. And now you see an act come out and they have this whole choreographed people dancing around the singer, and nobody seems to be playing. Everybody's using auto-tune. And I'm thinking, well, I guess this is how it is now. And the fact that it's successful, I guess it's the right music for the time.
Exactly. Yeah, no, and I think that really... But you guys, was it strictly like... I mean, to cover the Stones' music, was it the only difference was that it was done acoustically, or were there other motivations to do that? No,
actually... the guy that I did it with, who had gone to a wedding, I met this guy in the 70s. He actually was a singer-songwriter trying to get a deal, and he saw Mark, Rodney, and myself play, and he came running. He goes, "Oh my God, I have to join your band. You guys are fantastic." We said, "Well, sorry, man, we already got a deal. We're going to Muscle Shoals and do a record with Ometer." And he goes, so we go, "Okay." So, a million years later, he calls me and said, "I was at this party. It was somebody, I guess it was a wedding party. And there were all these singer-songwriters there. And so we said, "Here, play something," but nobody knew anybody's songs. So somebody went up on stage and started banging out Ruby Tuesday.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, everybody in the place was singing, all these great singers started singing Ruby Tuesday, and he said, "Man, somebody needs to do a record like this." So he wanted to find the right guys to do it, and so ended up, we made this record and completely reinvented the songs. If you get a chance to hear it,
yeah.
What we kind of did is our kind of angle was that what would these songs have sounded like if Keith and Mick would have been born in California? And so that's kind of the angle that we had, because we were such Buffalo Springfield and CSN fans, Beatles fans. And the fact that the Stones, I mean, my God, they're so successful and write incredibly great hooks, but their gift was not really having a real polished record or not exactly being in tune all the time, but it didn't matter. But because of the way their records were made, you know, a lot of the stuff compared to the Beatles, which to me was the ultimate great produced, fantastic perfection. The Stones, there was a place for that music to go, even though it was already great and made, you know, monster stars out of them. The music had never been played with, you know, with finesse and cleaned up a little bit and adding really good harmonies instead of Keith wandering by a mic occasionally singing, you know, harmony with Mick. So that music had a place to go, and so we wanted to kind of make it like a CSN or the Beatles had arranged it. So we had really tight harmonies and really good playing, and it was really fun to do and kind of really got me back into wanting to play live again. I mean, those are monster hits. I mean, Ruby Tuesday, Satisfaction. I mean, those guys are sick.
Yeah, but they were, you know, they were setting the bar very high, and you know, it's what do you think about how compare and contrast the venues and the audiences that you see today back in contrast to My Father's Place, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, there are still places that they're not nearly as many, but I try to go back east at least once a year, and the enthusiasm back there for this kind of music is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I was just back there in May. I did a show with Richie Furay, which was fantastic.
Wow.
And he still sounds great. He's 70 years old, and he sings. He sounds exactly like he did in the Buffalo Springfield. I mean, remarkably kept in fantastic shape. And what was really cool, because Richie and I mean, his mom used to babysit me when I was a kid. They had in Yellow Springs, there was Furay's drugstore, and my mom used to drop me off there when I was like 4 years old, and Richie's he's 8 years older than me, so I didn't really know Richie then. But we went back to New York and we talked about it, and I told him how influential that Buffalo Springfield was to me. And I said, when I heard the Buffalo Springfield record, I kind of got into this Batdorf and Rodney thing and started writing these songs that were originally just for me.
Mm-hmm.
It became Batdorf and Rodney. And I said, you know, if you wouldn't mind it, I would love to do one of the Buffalo Springfield songs to end my set, just because you guys are the reason I'm even here.
Hmm.
So he said, what do you want to play? I go, how about On the Way Home? And because I know he played it, and he goes, yeah, go ahead and do it, man. So I said, okay, great. So I'm at the sound check, and I'm playing it, and Richie's there, and they are done the sound check, and I said, you know, Richie, I wouldn't be pissed off if you decided to come out and sing this with me. And he goes, well, you know, I don't know. And I said, well, you know, whatever. And then we were just kind of messing around singing it. And so I do my set, and I'm doing the last song, which is On the Way Home. And then after the first verse, everybody starts, the crowd's clapping. I'm going, what, are they just figuring out what song it is? Well,
yeah, right. Well, Richie's coming out, yeah.
Yeah, and then we sang On the Way Home. I jumped at the high part, and, man, what a trip that was. I mean, to have him there, to me, it was like having a Beatle there. Because that's how important that band was for me. This is important as when I first heard the Beatles, seeing what the Buffalo Springfield did, and the sound that they created was the only reason I'm playing. And it was so cool. He sat there and watched my whole set, and I was really nervous. But he's such a great guy.
You know, what an inspiring story that is. I mean, that to me, it's like, you know, what do you still feel? What gives you the most satisfaction? You know, when it comes to the live musical. You know, I interview a lot of the jazz cats. You know, and in my mind, you know, music or jazz is street music. You know, and I feel like. You know, sometimes we're a little bit more of an inside culture now, and I'm just trying to, when you get into that live setting, what is that that feeling that you still look for? If you want to feel.
Well, it's still the same. It's just the people are older. There are some newer people who are, kind of rediscovering some of the music that was out before they were born. But the people that come, like in New York, the whole New York, Massachusetts, the whole New England area, and of all places, St. Louis is a huge listening town. I play there, and it's just like playing there in 1971. It really is. It's the same feeling. You get the same reverence from the people.
Wow.
That said, that, wow, you guys did this and did this, and which was really remarkable because the way we feel about Crosby, Stills and Nash and Coco and the Beatles, here are some other musicians who were there. Said, man, you guys really made me want to come out and play guitar. I bought a guitar because I saw Batdorf and Rodney, and those stories are just great because what you did wasn't a waste of time. It changed somebody else's life, and that's really so great.
Well, John Batdorf, I just wanted to say, it was I really enjoyed this session. We'll pick it up again soon, and I'm serious. I would love to get my hands on one of those studio recordings of you, Rick, Carlos, and Midland, dude. That must be insane.
Well, I have to try to find it. I don't know where it is. I may even be at the manager's place. That was our saving Hail Mary right there.
It was great. It was great to talk to you, man. And we'll definitely plan for a part 2.
Hey, man, thank you.
All right, man. Take it easy.
Have a good night.
All right, you too. Peace.
Hey, man.
Bye.
Bye.